The allegation that players on the New Orleans Saints were paid money for hitting players with such brutal force it knocked them out of games.
Kill the hit, the body will die. So lay that motherfucker out. We're going to dominate the line of scrimmage, and we're going to kill the hit. Remember me. I got the first one.
A $50,000 pot of cold hard cash for defensive NFL players to take out opponents, $1,500 to tear an ACL, even more if someone was knocked unconscious, and a lucrative bonus if they did not return to the game. If the player was a Hall of Famer, the stakes were even higher, at one point $10,000 by a solo contributor. This was a different side of the NFL, a dark side, a dirty side, and all occurring while the clock was ticking down, sometimes even in the biggest games on the biggest stages. The New Orleans Saints Bountygate was a debacle for Who Dat Nation and an embarrassment for the NFL. Lengthy investigations and long suspensions were dished out. However, the brainchild behind this Bountygate, Gregg Williams, is still a coach in the NFL, most recently being employed as the New York Jets defensive coordinator. Today, we're going to take a story at the New Orleans Saints Bountygate controversy. Before we get to that, guys, please take a moment to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on my notifications to help this channel grow. Understand that all my videos may not be shown to you because we tend to walk on a tightrope of controversy with this Dark Stories of the NFL series. On top of that, I live stream on Twitch on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays at 9 p.m. Pacific time. Now that we got all that out of the way, break! The New Orleans Saints, 2010 Super Bowl champions, are a refreshing result for a city that had overcome a devastating flood from Hurricane Katrina, leaving much of the city poverty-stricken and a sad sight for such a lovely city whose motto was "Let the good times roll." Drew Brees, the quarterback, was Super Bowl MVP and practically the king of Mardi Gras. Sean Payton, the head coach, was a revered man.
4 years ago, whoever thought this would be happening? When 85% of a city was underwater, most people not knowing if New Orleans would ever come back or if the organization of the team would ever come back. And we just all looked at one another and said, we're going to rebuild together. We're going to lean on each other. And that's what we've done here for the last 4 years, and this is the culmination of all that belief and that faith.
Looking back, was that Super Bowl won in vain? The wins from that season a result of a continuous habit of dirty play by a defense that was playing each game, each snap, for a bounty that encouraged the injuring of the opposite players in a do-whatever-it-takes mentality. What were the implications for the Saints when they finally got caught? And are the people responsible for such a toxic system still involved in football? Meet Gregg Williams, NFL defensive coordinator, and a gypsy coach who has stamped his NFL passport in numerous cities including Houston, Tennessee, New Orleans, Los Angeles, Cleveland, and now at the age of 61, New York. Now meet Sean Payton, the New Orleans Saints head coach since 2006, 7 playoff appearances and 1 Super Bowl win. Also, a 1-year suspension from the NFL because he told defensive coordinator Gregg Williams to make his defense nasty and they became vile. This nasty defense was built around a bounty system that was investigated to have occurred between the years of 2009 to 2011, including that illustrious 2010 Super Bowl winning year for the Saints. Payton has adamantly been downplaying the Bountygate scandal for the past 8 years, and has more than just a chip on his shoulder from his 1-year suspension. Payton told 105.7 The Fan in Baltimore a few months ago,
what took place with us back in 2011 in so many ways was a sham. The players were vindicated, but from a league or coaching standpoint, there's no union, there's no representation. Honestly, something I'll never truly get over because I know how it was handled and how it was run and how it and the reasons behind it.
The definition of a bounty is a sum paid for capturing or killing a person or animal. In the NFL, these are called non-contracted bonuses and are absolutely forbidden. The NFL rules state that payments of bonuses based on performance against an individual player or team, as well as bonuses for on-field misconduct, undermines the integrity of the game. However, the bounty system is known to have been around for years, with some saying up to 40% of players are participating in it one way or another. The New Orleans Saints in 2012 were the ones caught red-handed in what is now known as Bountygate. The first rumblings of this was spoke about after the Saints' 2010 NFC Championship game against the Minnesota Vikings, a back-and-forth game that the Saints won. That game, however, in a time that the rough play of the NFL was under a microscope and the word CTE was being used more often in the media, was notoriously rough. The Vikings quarterback was a Hall of Famer, Brett Favre, and it was he who many Vikings players and coaches claimed that the Saints were trying to hurt on purpose. At one point, Brett Favre was hit below the knees by Saints defensive end Bobby McCray, and it knocked Favre out of the game with an ankle injury for a short time. There were also several late hits in the game and crushing blows, especially to Favre. Jonathan Vilma became the face of the bounty program after admitting to putting up $10,000 during the Saints' NFC Championship game to be given to any player who could knock Brett Favre out of the game. Vilma only admitting to it after the NFL had conducted a long investigation, an investigation that began after a fired defensive assistant by the name of Mike Cirillo tipped off the NFL anonymously. Sean Payton, who had said numerous times that he was unaware of the bounty system, quickly worked to try to cover it up by telling Williams and assistant Joe Vitt to make sure our ducks are in a row. The NFL investigation reviewed approximately 18,000 documents totaling more than 50,000 pages. What they found was pretty lethal, especially to the Saints' reputation. Documents stated that Sean Payton ignored instructions from the NFL and Saints ownership to make sure bounties weren't being paid. The league also reprimanded him for choosing to falsely deny that the program existed. They also found that players and other participants involved used their own money to fund a pay-for-performance program where players would earn cash for plays such as interceptions or fumble recoveries. They also earned bounty payments for card-offs and knockouts. The NFL would end up finding out that Favre was not the only target in 2009, but also Arizona Cardinals quarterback Kurt Warner was targeted in the 2009 playoffs and knocked out of a game with a chest injury, as well as Green Bay Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers, Carolina Panthers quarterback Cam Newton, and Seattle Seahawks quarterback Matt Hasselbeck during 2011, which was supposedly the last season of the bounty system. The judge of the program was, of course, Greg Williams, and his helpers were other defensive coaches. Greg would dish out the funds for various occasions, and the New Orleans Saints owner Tom Benson was found to not be aware of the bounty program. The league had given Benson a heads up regarding information about a bounty system before the investigation was complete, and he stated that he had directed the Saints general manager, Mickey Loomis, to discontinue any bounty program immediately. In the final report, it showed that Loomis did not follow Benson's directions, and when the initial allegations were discussed in 2010, he denied any knowledge of a bounty program and pledged that he would ensure that no such program was in place. The NFL found that there was no evidence that Mr. Loomis took any effective action to stop these practices. That takes some gall to ignore your owner, but that is what the NFL discovered. In regards to Sean Payton, the league found that he was not a direct participant in the funding or administration of the program, but he was very aware of the allegations and did not seek the truth about what was going on, and failed to stop the bounty program. On March 6, 2012, Sean Payton and Mickey Loomis would issue a joint statement taking full responsibility for the bounty system, saying that we acknowledge that the violations disclosed by the NFL during their investigation of our club happened under our watch. We take full responsibility. This has brought undue hardship on Mr. Benson, who had nothing to do with this activity. These are serious violations, and we understand the negative impact it has had on our game. Both of us have made it clear within our organization that this will never happen again, and make that same promise to the NFL, and most importantly to all of our fans. 3 days later, quarterback Drew Brees issued a statement denying that he knew anything about the bounty program. Ignorance is bliss, isn't it? Isn't everything Drew Brees says believable?
I assume you'd be the first to speak out against any bounty that is intended to be payment for inflicting and taking somebody else out of the game because it could happen to you.
Yeah, I mean, but I think what we're talking about is there have been a lot of false accusations in regards to what the Saints bounty, quote unquote, was. And I think initially with the NFL's media campaign, I think it was portrayed in a way that, hey, these guys are being paid to go out and intentionally hurt people. And that was never the case, and it's yet to be proven. Unfortunately, I think the perception has kind of become reality in that regard, but I think that all that will come out in due time, and these guys will be vindicated.
On March 12th, the NFL handed out punishments. Greg Williams was suspended indefinitely, Sean Payton was suspended for the entire 2012 season, Mickey Loomis was suspended for the first 8 games of the 2012 season, and Joe Vitt for the first 6 games of the 2012 season. The New Orleans Saints were fined $500,000 and lost 2 second-round draft picks, one in 2012 and one in 2013. Payton, Vitt, and Loomis would all appeal their suspensions. On April 9th, Goodell turns down the appeals, and on May 2nd, Goodell would suspend Jonathan Vilma for the entire 2012 season. He would suspend Will Smith for 4 games, and former Saints players Anthony Hargrove for 8 games and Scott Fujita for 3 games. On May 4th, the NFLPA would step in and file a grievance against Goodell for the player suspension, saying that he cannot punish players for actions that happened before the 2011 CBA signing. Later in May, Vilma would even sue Roger Goodell for defamation.
You know what we had today was just a chance for both sides to really speak candidly about the differences. Right now, it's a lack of communication from both sides, and I think today we got to accomplish some of the discrepancies that were, let's call them the hang-ups, really, that were causing all the issues. And I think now that we've had this conversation, we'll see what happens from here.
On June 1st, the NFL says that they have a copy of a Saints ledger which details payments for subjects such as card-off and wax. On September 7th, after the player appeals have been heard in court, a panel vacates Goodell's suspensions on all the players, allowing all of them to play in 2012, and it is now up to Goodell to either alter or affirm them. Roger would drop Fujita's suspension to 1 game, Hargrove to 7, but keeps Smith and Vilma's suspensions the same. In mid-October, the players appeal again, and Vilma asks Goodell to bow out since Vilma has a suit against him. Goodell assigns former Commissioner Paul Tagliabue to hear the appeals. On December 11th, Tagliabue vacates Goodell's suspensions, saying via NFL.com, unlike Saints' broad organizational misconduct, player appeals involve sharply focused issues of alleged individual player misconduct in several different aspects. My affirmation of Commissioner Goodell's findings could certainly justify the issue of fines. However, this entire case has been contaminated by the coaches and others in the Saints organization.
Are you satisfied with what former Commissioner Tagliabue said?
Well, certainly satisfied in the ruling that he did not believe that there was any evidence supporting the suspensions of the players. Frankly, I'm still disappointed in the National Football League and certainly disappointed in the way in which they conducted an investigation, because I now know, having read and seen all of the testimony, that there was certainly no evidence that the bounties existed.
Well, but are you saying that in your judgment, there was no bounty at all on the part of the New Orleans Saints? None at all?
Having seen nearly 50,000 pages of evidence and nearly 20 hours of testimony, I know that there was no bounty put on players by Saints players.
There was no payment for taking somebody out of the game?
Absolutely not.
On April 5th, documentary filmmaker Sean Pampillion released the audio of Greg Williams telling his team to target several of the 49ers players.
We don't apologize for how we're going to play. Kill the head, the body. We've got to do everything in the world to make sure we kill Frank Gore's head. We want him running sideways. We want his head sideways. Every single one of you, before you get off the pile, affect the head.
On January 22, 2013, Roger Goodell reinstated Sean Payton and in a statement said Sean fully complied with all requirements imposed on him during his suspension. On February 7, 2013, less than 1 year of serving his suspension, Roger Goodell reinstated Greg Williams, who was immediately hired by the Tennessee Titans, who released a statement that read, "The commissioner cited several reasons for the reinstatement, including Williams' forthcoming acknowledgement of and acceptance of responsibility for his role in the bounty program at the Saints. His commitment to never again be involved in a pay-for-performance or bounty system, and his pledge to teach safe play and respect for the rules at all levels of the game." Greg Williams, when asked about Bountygate, even as recently as last September, stands behind a Jets podium and states,
"We don't do that. We've never done it anywhere I've been. We don't do anything to hurt the team. It's the number one primary thing. If you're committing penalties, you're doing those type of stuff. We just don't do it."
Then other times he says, a bounty system is something that is done everywhere across all levels of football. Perhaps Greg Williams needs to be checked for a concussion as well. Whether Greg Williams still has a bounty system is up to anyone's guess. But Sean Payton continues to get riled up on the subject, talking in circles and sounding more like a conspiracy theorist than a head coach after a reporter asked him about his reaction to the report that he'd led a cover-up.
It was brutal. It was such a rigged. I can't even begin to tell you. The more and more people looked at it, and the more and more people looked at where the information came from. You know, the disgruntled Saints employee who happened to miss 2 weeks of work and never reported to any one of us where he was, that we knew we were firing after the season. The disgruntled employee who happens to work for the league now, like just got hired last year. And I happen, you know, we get wind from former league employees saying that this was a deal done.
Payton continues to blast the NFL league office in every chance he can get, but admittedly, the Saints have been hosed by the officials in some recent impactful playoff games. 12 years later, Sean is still bitter on the suspension and can still find petty ways to express his anger. For example, during the 2020 draft that was done virtually, Sean displayed league sponsor rival products on his coffee table, just his latest dig on the league for how they treated him. I guess if people are wondering if bounty systems are still alive in the NFL, perhaps you should tune into the New York Jets this fall and see if their defense has suddenly become nasty. But let me know in the comment section down below, do you feel like the bounty system punishments were too severe? Do you agree with Sean Payton and his perspective on the league? If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and check out our other videos in our Dark Stories of the NFL series. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping the mic until our next upload.